Hi guys, welcome to Snakes and Adders. This is another episode of our introducing series and we're now on episode 33, believe it or not. We've really been racking them up and I'm really pleased because it's one of the most diverse lists of species that are going to be applicable for the beginner, which is what we set out to do right at the very beginning when we started doing these videos, was to offer alternatives and slightly different choices from the accepted norm that was just corn snakes and royal pythons. So today's species of choice is a North American water snake called the diamondback water snake. Its Latin name is Nerodia rhombifer. Nerodia rhombifer was first described by Edward Halliwell in 1852. Edward Halliwell, as well as being an accomplished physician, an active practicing physician, he was also an incredibly prolific herpetologist, and Edward Halliwell described over 60 new species to science of reptiles. When it was first described, its Latin name was Tropidonotus rhombifer. Subsequent taxonomic changes were made. Edward Drinker Cope, who I've mentioned before on these videos, again another highly prolific herpetologist during this period, changed the Latin name to Natrix rhombifer in 1889. So this is where this snake and its brethren, its different cousins, would remain for the following 93 years. And it illustrates how closely aligned science believed that these snakes were with the European grass snakes, dice snakes and viperine water snakes of genus Natrix, who still remain in genus Natrix today. Finally, they were reclassified to Nerodia in 1892 by a gentleman called Hobart Muir Smith and another gentleman by the surname of Brodie. The genus Nerodia was first described by Baird and Girard in 1853 when describing Nerodia clarkii, which is the salt marsh water snake. Diamondback water snakes are colubrid snakes that belong to a huge and sprawling family called Colubridae. Now, when we deal predominantly with the animals in the pet trade, we're dealing with three families. So we've got Boidae, boas, Pythonidae, pythons, and then everything else, which is Colubridae. Now, yes, there's a Lapidae, Crotolinidae, Viperidae, all this stuff, but they're all the venomous snakes and don't really feature in our hobby unless you're one of the specialist DWA keepers or hot keepers in America. So if it's not a boa or a python, it's a colubrid. Now, that covers a lot of space when you start thinking about pines, bulls, gophers, house snakes, hognose snakes, false water cobras, water snakes, grass snakes. Oh, the list is just endless, and it's a huge melting pot of genera. So what they've had to do is come up with subfamilies to try and streamline these groups of snakes. And these snakes were put into a subfamily called Natricinae. Now, Natricinae was introduced in 1838 by a gentleman called Charles Lucien Bonaparte. Yes, that Bonaparte. He was Napoleon Bonaparte's nephew. I swear, like when you're reading up about stuff like this, you find out loads of interesting gear, and it's about these old school dudes and the stuff that they do. I find it really interesting, man, all this history, because it's our collective history as a hobby and what we do and the keepers that we are and the keepers that have been in the past and how we're as a collective moving forward. So yeah, like Napoleon Bonaparte's nephew invented the subfamily Natricinae and placed a load of different genera within there. Currently, there are 34 genera included in Natricinae. So there is Natrix, Nerodia, which we've both covered already, Regina, which is the crayfish snakes, Rhabdophis, which are the keelback snakes, Storaria, which are brown snakes or red belly snakes, Xenocrophis, which are the painted keelbacks. Now, when you look facially at all these snakes, they are very, very similar. They have eyes mounted towards the front of the face, elongate jaws going backwards, the eyes are towards the top of the head, and they're very much alike as you start looking through, and you'll be able to draw the comparisons as you look at the different animals. Diamondback water snakes have a massive natural range, and in certain parts of their area they're almost considered very common. And their range includes Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Iowa, Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Tennessee, Mississippi, Georgia, and Alabama. And these are particularly prevalent along the Mississippi River Valley. Got there in the end. I didn't put my teeth in this morning. As a result of being so closely associated with water, their most common prey items that they're associated with are frogs, toads, and fish. In captivity, they can be trained with relative ease to accept mice, although we have to be careful because we can make them obese. They've got very fast metabolisms and used to taking that lower density food. So when you give them high protein content, mice and rats, and high fat content, you can make chunky monkeys out of these guys, and they are a reasonably good sized snake anyway. The care must be taken when we feed them fish. So in the past, we would create deficiencies by not knowing what we were feeding them, and this is because these fish contained an enzyme called thiaminase. Now, thiaminase stops the uptake of thiamine. The other name for thiamine is vitamin B1. All living creatures require thiamine to function, both for energy release and for their nervous system functions. So animals that develop deficiencies would often fit out and have massive neurological crashes, which was very, very off-putting to watch. But now we understand why they're so closely associated with nervous system function. So fish that are okay to use are bass, haddock, hake, halibut, mackerel, perch, plaice, salmon, tilapia, trout, pond smelt, sprat, and sea bass. I always use sprats or sprat parts. If you want to feed live fish, you can use guppies and platies, although larger water snakes, I mean, this is only a medium-sized water snake, will not be satisfied with this. They're far too small, it'd be a waste of time. In the case of using fish fillets or fish parts, there may well be the need to supplement the diet because you're not giving it a total prey item. So something like Nutribol or Repton could be used every 4th meal to try and help balance things out, provide some D3 for bone strength, all the rest of it. Diamondback water snakes are highly sexually dimorphic, and actually as adults, that you can literally just pick them up and identify the sexes that they are immediately. 3 factors become apparent in older animals. 1, size. Females are far bigger than males. Males will top out. I mean, this would be the adult size for a good sized boy. Even though this one's a female, which I will show you in a minute, I'm going to show you a male to compare, and we'll take you through it. So size. Females can approach upwards of 150 centimetres in length. The record is a little over 170 centimetres. This would be a big snake, and it would be chunky at this point. Also, the second one is post-anal hempenal bulges and the tail length, where the males have got a far longer tail, and post-anally, when we find the anal plate, the males have got massive swellings showing the sex organs post-anally on their tail. And third, and most interesting of all, male diamondback water snakes have warts on their chin. So the elongate chin shields that they have a load of pimples and raised skin sections across these scales. And it's really interesting. Science is still out to debate on this, but it's thought to be something to do with mating ritual and stimulation. So this is a female. So let's work through the checklist. Now, size. She's not necessarily a massive water snake at this point, but what we're going to do is we can find the anal plate, which is here. We look at the tail, and it's relatively short, and it becomes very thin straight after the plate. I can see where the plate is. So this is the tail. And then the other marker that we're going to use is the chin. Now, I'm hoping the camera will pick this up, but it's unlikely. But this is lovely and smooth and polished. Absolutely no markings here whatsoever. No raised skin or anything to look at. Whereas if I just get a male, bear with me 1 second. So here we have a male. So he's more slender straight away. This guy, when we look at his anal scale here, we can see the big lump that continues, and the overall tail length is much, much longer. But the interesting scales that we're after are these chaps. And if we look, you can see it's rough, how it moves with the touch of my finger. And they're the warts I'm talking about. And it makes it, they're immediately sexable from that point. I began when these first came in, probing them out, and then realised very quickly that actually there was no need. There's another male that I can get just to show you a third example, so that we know that the system is following. You're a wriggle bum, you aren't you? Let's come here. So again, we're going to work through, we'll have a look, see. Let's have a look at you. Again, let's just have your, this one's got a really big tail. So that's his anal plate, and you can see how big and fat the tail remains and the length. And then let me just have your face, kiddo. Yes, I know. 1 second. Look underneath, and there are those chin warts again. Now, these are imported. They're not really bred in any huge numbers. There are a few Europeans, such as Stephen Ball, that are working with this species and producing them, and if you can get captive bred, great. What you'll find is that demand completely outstrips supply, and imported animals may well be the only way that we're going to be able to keep them, particularly in the UK. In the US, you've probably got no such problems, although I don't know what the state laws are about collection, so feel free to comment if you're from the States regarding the keeping and collection of the wild-caught snakes over there. Now, what you'll also find when you read about Nerodia is how they can be devils, that they are psychopathic and they're aggressive and they want to bite and they won't sit still and all the rest of it, when in actual fact I found the exact opposite to be the case. Myself and Paul have been working with 10 animals that we brought in since last week, and these are fresh imported snakes, and they are as good as gold. There's no negative reactions, there is no striking, there's no aggression. They're wonderful, wonderful snakes. And to be honest, I think a lot of their reputation is misplaced. And if you work with them with confidence and you handle them with purpose and you're not gun shy around them, actually they're completely compliant snakes and absolutely fabulous to work with. They feed readily, they've got very, very good appetites, again fast metabolism, so maybe slightly higher in maintenance. Adult size anything from 30 inches to 5 feet, so anything from a 3 to 4 foot vivarium. Now this is where a juxtaposition comes, which we've discussed previously, such as with anacondas and other animals that are considered to be aquatic, that if we keep them in humid, muggy environments, these animals will blister and cause all sorts of skin problems for themselves. We can give them a bowl in which they can submerge, and they are very keen to do so, and they love to have a swim. But you will not allow the tank to become steamed up, muggy or waterlogged. These animals must be allowed to dry out once they come out of the water, and we will keep them on a dry substrate such as lignocell, aspen or beech chippings, and this will allow them to dry off thoroughly, and this avoids the issue of blisters coming out in the skin. They are relatively long-lived at around 12 to 15 years, not as long-lived as some of the other colubrids, and this tends to maybe be a trait of the fish-eating snakes. Reproduction, these are live bearers, and to say they're prolific understates it massively. These snakes are capable of having 40 or 50 young in a single litter, and their cousin, the green water snake, Nerodia cyclopeon, that's quoted as having upwards of 70 or 80 young, so they are incredibly prolific animals. They do not require mad heat. They can be heated with either underbelly heaters or a spot bulb on a thermostat. As always, thermostats are a prerequisite. Basking area of around 28 to 29 degrees. They can cool off to 23 or 24 degrees Celsius at the cool end. Honestly, you could do far worse than keep one of these snakes as a beginner animal. This in 1990, what were you? The one I had was called Lennon, and she was my second snake, and that would have been about 92. And my first snake was a broad-banded or common water snake, which was Nerodia cypidon, both of which were sold to me by Paul, who is my mentor here at Snakes and Adders, and again gave me the same story that I'm giving you now about how they have a bad rap and a bad reputation for no reason, and that they are absolutely fantastic snakes. So do your research. The family name is Nerodia. There are plenty of subspecies for you to find or look at, but one of my all-time favourites is the diamondback. It has the most interesting pattern, it has that individual wart feature to the chins of boys, and you know, I found them to just be fabulously easy to work with. We'll be back again soon with another video. All the best, guys. Cheers.